it's a situation, a real life incident that occurred in America. This was in 1992. And I read a novel based on this incident last summer in Bhavali. And just looking at the notes at the back of the novel where the person had done the research from, I found that there was actually a stage play, because I said this is ideal for a stage play and for a monologue. And it's based on a play called Lorilei. And then amazingly, I just punched in Lorilei onto YouTube, and I found fabulous production produced of all places in Pakistan. So it was 2 productions back to back, an English production with a single actress, directed by another actress. And then the other actress did an Urdu production of the same script, directed by the woman who played in the English one. And somewhere this lingered in my conscious, because I think it's a very relevant theme. It's thought-provoking. Of course, it is serious, but we promise you all events are not going to be so serious. I'm going to spend any more time. I'm going to invite Radhika to take this seat. I'm going to ask all of you to switch your videos off completely. And 45 minutes long, followed by a kind of discussion for some time. And then I think, a free-for-all as usual. So welcome to the first event in our online Tisri Manzil series. I also want to thank Ashish, who's hosting. I want to thank Ritvik, who's actually transcribed this entire script. And Ritvik is going to load the video of what we're shooting just now onto the Ruchika Facebook page, and that exists with 107 pictures, which Arshia has so beautifully organized for us, of all our productions from 2006 till today. So here's Radhika, and enjoy the journey. I can't say, I don't know if the word is enjoy, but take the journey with us. Okay. In the little box in the bottom. You see yourself here. Yeah? That's how you see yourself. Okay? You need to just adjust yourself back a little bit. And once you're ready, Radhika, you can start.
My name is Lorilei. Lorilei, ye Lore. Do you know what that means? As I understand, Lorilei was this spirit, this ghost, and she lived deep under a river in Germany. She would lure men to her death with her beauty and her sad songs. Lorilei. And that is my name too. On February 7th, 1992, my son was coming home on the school bus, Jeremy. And I remember he wanted a bite to eat. He wanted to watch cartoons. At that time, I was staying with a friend of mine, and she had a young child. He wasn't letting Jeremy watch cartoons. And I remember Jeremy was very agitated. He wanted to watch those cartoons. You know what small children can be like. So he went to get his BB gun and go out and play. He pulled up a chair close to the closet and he climbed up to get his BB gun. And I said, hold on, hang on. I'll get it down for you. And I climbed up and got the BB gun down for him. And I gave it to him. It wasn't unusual for Jeremy and a friend of his to go shoot BBs at the edge of the woods. They would do that often. So off he went to play. It wasn't much later, maybe half an hour or 2 hours. I don't know. In February, it gets dark very early. So I went out to look for him. And where I lived, there are 6 houses in a row. Everybody knew everybody, and we all had children. My brother has lived there for 30 years, and he still lives there today. So I went and I started knocking houses closest to mine, and it was really a quiet Friday afternoon. Very quiet. unusually so. I naturally just went knocking on the houses closest to the end. And when I got to that two-storied house, I knocked on the door and Ricky Langley answered the door. Now, I do not know who this person is. I have never seen Ricky Langley before. I have no idea who he is. I just naturally went to the house closest to the end and knocked on that first, and Ricky Langley answered the door. When he answered the door, I asked, well, have you seen my son? And he said, who is your son? And I said, Jeremy. And he said, oh no, he's not here. And I said, fine, I'll just go and my brother's and look for him there. Would you like to come in and use the phone? I struggled a little inside myself a bit. I did. I struggled and I thought, no, it's okay. I'll just go to my brother's. And then I said, yes, I will use that phone. And I went in and I called my brother. And when it said it was busy, I just shut the phone and left. And I went to my brother's and I asked them, have you seen Jeremy? And when they said no, that's when I thought, oh my God, that child has gone into those woods with his BB gun and he can't find his way out. That's what I thought. That's what I thought then. At that point, I made a lot of calls. I made a lot of phone calls. I can't remember who I called. I called the sheriff's department. I called the fire department. I called, good God, my son is lost in the woods and you've got to go and find him. I wanted to go to the woods and find him myself, but I didn't know my way around the woods and I was terrified. I wanted to go there and look for him myself. So I remember I took my sister-in-law's car and I drove the car deep into the edges of the woods and I shined the lights into the wood and I shouted his name, Jeremy, Jeremy. Then I was silent. I was silent just in case I could see or hear anything, just anything. I don't remember. Sorry. I'm sorry. I don't remember a lot about that day. I remember the sheriff's department came, the fire department came, and then my daddy came. My daddy came to pick me up that evening, and I said, Dad, Jeremy's lost in the woods. I can't find him, Daddy. He's lost in the woods. And he went. He left immediately. He went out to search for him. And you know, it was advertised. Good God, no, it wasn't advertised. It was in the local news, and anybody and everybody who knew those woods, they were out looking for this little boy. Jeremy, he was 6 years old. At that point, do you know what I was thinking? I was thinking, Jeremy went to the woods with his friend, and I was thinking, maybe he's hurt. Maybe he's fallen asleep somewhere out there. Maybe he's lost. Maybe he's looking. I mean, I know that he would be scared and lonely. Maybe he was just unconscious. It just went on and on and on in my head. And I recall thinking, I need a drink. I'm sorry. Yes, I recall correctly. Ricky Langley. I sat on the porch of that two-storied house and he poured me some liquor. I don't know how much liquor. I don't know what it was. I just downed it because I was losing it. And I was quickly going over the edge, so I just downed it. The search went on for 3 days and 3 nights. You know, it went as far as helicopters in the sky, and two kinds of dogs. They were called to search in two different ways, and the Marine Division was called out to look into the canal. And we have canals in our wood, and it just went from one extreme to another. And throughout all of this, it never once crossed my mind that my son was dead. My mind went to all kinds of places. It did wander to all kinds of places. I thought he's hurt, he's unconscious somewhere. I knew he was scared. I knew he was lonely. I knew he was hungry. Then on the third day, it went as far as me thinking, you know what? Maybe he's walking up the highway and somebody's picked him up. And I just prayed to the Lord that that person didn't have kids and wanted a child and wouldn't hurt him. But it never occurred to me. It never occurred to me even once that he was dead. I don't remember a whole lot about that time. I just remember where my mind took me. Well, on the third day, the FBI called me down to the sheriff's office, and they wanted me to go there, which I did. I did go there, and they questioned me. They questioned me about 7 days prior to the disappearance of my son. Everything and everybody I met, every little step I took, anybody I knew who'd be angry with me, any little thing, really thorough, like getting up and getting a glass of water and sitting there. And when I got to the part of about knocking on that 2-story door and Ricky Langley opening the door, they just got up and left. You see that name, Ricky Langley, that meant something to them. This woman, this parole officer, she was on the loose, and she said that he was on the loose, and the last address he was seen was in our area. That name, Ricky Langley, meant something to them. He was in violation of his parole, and he had a long history of being a pedophile. What do you know about the boy? I only saw it on the news. No, you look at me into the eye and you tell me, what do you know about the disappearance of that boy? Have you killed that boy? Have you killed that boy? I killed him. Where is the body? In my room, in the closet. And so it was. So while I was detained in the sheriff's office, he was taking them to where my son's body was, in that 2-storied house, in that room, in that closet, and had been there for 3 whole days. The command post not 50 yards from the door. Oh Lord, when the detective came and told me, we found your son, I said, oh my God, where is he? He said, he's there, and I'm free. I'm free. I remember I backed to the corner of the room. I was crouching down, just crouching down in pain, deep inside. Pain, just screaming. My sister-in-law's mother, she worked in the sheriff's office, and she tried to comfort me. But I just wanted to go. I don't know where. I just wanted to go. I tried to see my Jeremy. I wanted to see him. I felt like I wanted to see my son, and they wouldn't allow me. I came to find out that he was strangled by his fishing rod around his throat. The cause of death was strangulation, and suffocation. Fishing line around his throat and a dirty sock stuffed down his throat. That's the cause of death on the death certificate. I was in living hell. You don't want to know. You don't want to know what happened to my Jeremy. You don't want to know what happened to him. What the police and the papers said. I don't know how I coped. I guess I was just walking in a coma. I don't remember. I was 3 months pregnant at that time. That may have helped me carry on. I don't know. I don't remember. I just did what I had to. And I would think of Jeremy. He was in that closet, and I would bring Ricky Langley to my mind. And I would think that the bottle of liquor he gave, and how he patted and caressed my dead son's head, it was in his confession, and I wanted to kill him. I wanted to kill him with my bare hands. I don't know this personally, but my sister-in-law, she worked at the DA's office, and she told me that when she found out, she got a shotgun. She got a shotgun to kill. It took several members of the family and friends just to hold her back, and that's the way I felt. I wanted to kill him myself. That's lost time. That time between Ricky Langley's arrest and his trial, it is lost time. I was in a lost place, alone, cold and dark, in an unrestful place. When Jeremy died, it took all my faith. It took all my faith in the trust and goodness of this world. How did this happen? And I went deeper and deeper into depression. There were those nightmares, horrible nightmares. I was stuck. I was stuck on Jeremy's death and what he must have gone through. These thoughts would just come. They were stuck in my head, and I had no memory before that. No. They were just stuck in my head, stuck like a broken record. It was all downhill after that. All downhill. Alcohol, drugs, crack, cocaine. I went seeking crack and cocaine on the first anniversary of my son's death. And I found it. And it picked me up real hard. I continued for several years. I have been to the depths of hell, and that is not just a saying. I have been to the depths of hell. And then the trial came around. I held my head high. I went to that trial. I sat in the courtroom. I held Ricky Langley and the system accountable. And then they brought Ricky Langley in. The room grew real tense. I just stared at my shoes. I couldn't look up. I don't know if you can imagine this, but it was as if a portrait of evil was looking at it, and it was just too blinding. But I do remember an outburst. He stood up and said, "I want to die." I do remember that very vividly. I want to die. Well, I wasn't in the courtroom when they pronounced him guilty. I was in my motel room across the room. I didn't want his blood on my hands. You know, they go after child killers the way they go after no one else. So it was no surprise that Ricky Langley got the death sentence. And do you want to know what I thought? I thought I didn't care what he wanted. I'd just seen something from the trail of my son when they found him, and it was very, very, I didn't care whether he lived or died. My pain was so deep. Why should I care about him? And that was that. It was over. Ricky Langley had killed Jeremy. He was guilty. No one disputed that. We were all going to go home. But I wasn't finished. I wasn't done. I didn't know then, but I was still a victim. I am not a victim now. I see that. I am not a victim. I am the victim's mother. And then one day, I was taking care of Brock, Jeremy's brother, and I had things in my mind. I had Ricky Langley on my mind. I realized I didn't want him to die. Now, don't misunderstand me. I definitely feel that Ricky Langley should never walk the streets again, knowing what I do about pedophilia, and that there is no cure. The progression of the disease that leads to the murder of little children. I definitely feel that Ricky Langley is a danger and a threat, and I don't want some doctor lying and letting him loose without realization. But he has a disease. And I knew all about diseases from my alcoholism and drugs. I didn't want him punished for a disease. Langley had a disease, and he had no one. I wanted to support him. I don't want us to kill him. I felt compassion for Ricky Langley after learning some things about him. The family, the parents, that is where it all begins. Ricky Langley's parents were very poor folk, very, very poor. They lived down the woods with just a stove, rough folk. And one day they're driving in their car, and the little one, she drops something in the car, and the father stoops down to pick it up, and he's drunk and he's driving real fast, and he drives off the highway, and a pole goes straight through to the car. Now, the father, he pulls through, but the mother, she is in a coma. She is in a cast. For 7 days and 7 nights, she was in a coma. When she came through, the cast was from her neck to her legs. She opened her eyes and she asked, "Where are my babies?" And when the nurse was silent, she knew. The little one gone, and Oscar Lee, the apple of their eye, their boy. You must understand, please. He was sitting in the back of the car and that car wreck happened. The pole just went straight through him. Now, Bessie, the mother, she was in a hospital called Charity, and Charity had a reputation. Let's just say she spent months on end lying in pools of her own blood, watching roaches crawl along the walls, and she got an infection in one of her bones and they started her on antibiotics, everything. Then there was that gas that would trouble her. She would want it off, she would need it off, so she would scratch. And then they cut a hole in the plaster. And that was when Bessie got pregnant. Now, Bessie was in a cast for 5 months. When she got pregnant, she didn't tell anyone. Maybe she didn't know. I don't know. But operation after operation, X-ray after X-ray, and the drugs she was given, every drug imaginable on the earth, you name it, and she was given it. And all in the first trimester of her pregnancy. Do I need to tell you who was in that womb? Ricky. Now the doctors and the nurses in Charity, they didn't find out that Bessie was pregnant until she was 6 months pregnant. And even then, they kept giving her antibiotics, codeine, escarole, demerol. They pumped her with drugs all the way through. And when the cast was finally opened, Bessie said to her sister, "Oh my God, you should have heard that, Betty." The doctors at Charity urged her to abort the child because she had more broken bones than full, I guess. They told her the child would be born with no arms and no legs. But the daddy, he was a good religious fellow. He wanted another son. He did not permit Bessie to have that abortion. I don't know. Maybe they did the right thing. But the consequences, oh, the consequences. Ricky was born undersized. He is still undersized. He can't talk properly. He is colorblind. He is all but blind. He always has a headache, and from the very start, he cannot forget his parents talking about this little boy, Oscar Lee. Bessie had TB, so Ricky was raised by his relatives. He saw his mother off and on, but whenever he saw her, she was hysterical. Oscar Lee, Oscar Lee. Ricky grew up watching Bessie hysterical, having to be dragged from the graveyard where she would try and dig up Oscar Lee. And Ricky, you see, the trouble was that Oscar Lee and Ricky looked identical when they were little. But Ricky wasn't Oscar Lee. People started hearing him talk to Oscar Lee. He would say, "Oscar Lee isn't happy." At first they thought it was a pretend playmate, but it wasn't. Ricky's dead brother would come to him, not as a ghost to scare him, but to comfort him when he was lonely. Oscar Lee's body always stayed 6 years old because he was dead. But he grew up in other ways. He grew smart. He would take over Ricky's body and make him do things Ricky didn't want to do, and make him feel bad about them. By 6th grade, Ricky was putting up messages on the classroom bulletin board. "My name is not Ricky, it is Oscar Lee." And then there was the interference. You see, the most important thing that ever happened in Ricky's life happened before he was born. But interference. Ricky was small. He was so easy to manipulate, and he was weak. The reports say that he was sexually molested all the way through his childhood by a man he called uncle, and by young boys he called cousins. They would take him to this trailer deep in the woods where they would sodomize him repeatedly. This wasn't childhood, not one that we would envision anyways. Obviously, this is only a part of the story, but after what I have told you, is it any surprise that Ricky Langley has sexually molested children? And not just a few, hundreds of little boys and little girls in Georgia and here in Louisiana over many, many years. What kind of world is this? What kind? When a man scarcely bigger than a mouse can sexually abuse even one child? Who's looking out for these children? Who? You? And who is looking out for Ricky Langley? Well, I want to look out. I think of a child in a womb when you don't have to be a doctor to know that X-rays are not what a child inside needs. We all think we can see through him, right? But he is one of God's creatures, and this must end. It must end. Who was Ricky Langley speaking to that day when my boy went knocking onto his door? Who was he speaking to? There was no one in the house with him. He was alone. Ricky was speaking to Oscar Lee. And when Jeremy was there at the door, he thought it was Oscar Lee, come to make him feel bad, and Ricky didn't want his dead brother talking to him anymore. Oh Lord, this is not a man. He is someone who has had things done to him. He is as unhappy as they come. You know, all his life, he tried to take his life. He tried to shoot himself with a .22 in the head, and he missed. He stood on the highway waiting to be run over, but the cars honked and swerved around him. His arms and wrists have massive scars, and now some real man wants to do the job for him. Some real men like his daddy or those doctors at charity or his uncle or his cousins, they're real men. The ones who flick off the switch in this world, aren't they? I am not making much sense now. Did I tell you who Lorilei was? I was told she was this huge rock that looms over a river in Germany. And in their minds, they made this rock into a lady because she was so much bigger than them. On this rock, I knew I had to meet Ricky Langley. I knew I had to meet Ricky Langley one-on-one. Don't ask me why. I don't know. I had no cash, no means, and I knew that I knew that I had to meet him. The doors were opened and bam, it was meant to be. I went to the prison on my own and I signed my name, Lorilei. I sat in the room and I watched this gray light flicker just off and on, and somebody handed me a cup to drink, and I was just sitting there when they brought him. How did I view him as Ricky Langley. How did I see him? As a murderer? I mean, he is a murderer. He murdered my son. I couldn't raise my eyes, and in that silence, it lasted till the trumpet sounded, or so it seemed to me at least. I raised my head and I looked at him square in the eye and I said, I'm Lorilei, Jeremy's mother. Do you remember me? Of course, he did. Now I realize that I must keep in mind my own sores, and I can't put my 100% trust in this man who had murdered my son. But I asked questions, all sorts of questions, lots of questions. One after the other, I asked him questions, and he answered them all. He answered them, and stuff came out that I didn't even know, not even during the trial. For one, Jeremy not being molested. For 10 years, oh God, for 10 long years, we'd all thought that Jeremy had been molested. And Ricky Langley, he said he did not molest Jeremy. There was nothing in the forensic, there was nothing in the autopsy, and there was no trace of semen. So I guess I believed him. Nobody told us that. It was a big deal, you know. It's a big deal being misled and misguided, thinking that he was sexually molested all those years. Why does it matter to me? Oh, God only knows the nightmares that I have been through. Murder is extreme enough. But to think of what he must have gone through, my son, even on those 3 days, I didn't know. I don't know if he died on Friday. I don't know. I'm confused about the real facts of the case. And if there is anything I can do to receive the truth, I would, because I may never know. I may never know. But I did know that in that meeting with Ricky Langley, I had stared something down. I felt a weight go. At the end of our meeting, I felt it was important, and I think it was for me to tell him where I stood. I told him I opposed the death penalty and I would help him fight for his life. But I did say to him, Ricky, I will never allow you to walk the streets again. I will fight to the death to see you incarcerated and institutionalized. And do you know what he said? I agree with you. For some reason, he holds himself completely accountable to me. It is not up to me. You know, I have an opinion, but his fate is not up to me. And then I said goodbye. I stood up and I walked out of that prison. And I thought to myself, Ricky Langley is somebody's son. I am not going to just stand there and watch him be put down like this. This killing must stop. One day, I decided to tell my family. I was sitting with them. They were all around me, and I told them, I said, you know what? I'm going to write to the DA and I'm going to say I'm the victim's mother and I want to oppose the death penalty. Oh, the room became icy cold. My family has barely spoken to me since then. It is sad. It is sad in a way that I've lost my family because of all this. My son Brock, he is with me. My 10-year-old son Brock, he is with me. But when I was coming here from the South Carolina and I was very upset, Brock turned to me and he said, "Mama, why are you so sad?" And I said to him, I told him how I felt about the death penalty and how important it was. And he said to me, "Mama, just tell them everything you said to me. Just like that, as simple as that." Yes, yes, I think that is what I will do. Just tell them, Mama. Just tell them what you told me. Tell them. But you see, my family just does not understand. It's hard. It really is. It is hard to rise above all that hate. Well, the DA found out fast and the phone calls, they just wouldn't stop. I had found a damn good way to grab attention. "Please, ma'am, we just want to talk to you." Oh my God. Then the threats began. The threats. I had walked into this fiery furnace and I had to face it. They pulled out everything on me. My ties with crack, cocaine, my alcohol. They took Brock away from me. They took him away from me for a little while. Anything and everything they could do to keep me silent. They did it. They said it. And people, you know, when Jeremy died, people wrote me these wonderful, warm letters, generous and kind letters. Those same people, the letters they wrote were vicious, vicious and hard, very, very hard. Well, I understand. You see, I do understand. I understand the anger. That's the world we live in. That's the world I grew up in. That is the world Ricky Langley grew up in. A frightening world, an angry world. But you see, just that. It's that anger, that fear and that anger that I'm talking about. The fear and the anger it takes to kill someone. That is what I'm talking about. So, amidst all of this, I'm trying to build a stable life for myself and for Brock. And then they call me for retrial. I was going to have to go back to Louisiana. I was going to have to give evidence again about that day in 1992. When the time came to give a testimony, I was going to stand there and say that I did not want Ricky Langley killed. Not in my name, not in anybody's name. My God, if I thought I was walking a tangled path, I didn't know half of it. I slept very badly that night, you see. I had people come in and tell me that they have new evidence about what Ricky Langley did to my son, and that'll make me change my mind. And I had Ricky Langley's defense file in motion saying that Lorilei has forgiven Ricky Langley, and that made my blood boil. I have not forgiven Ricky Langley. I never said I have forgiven Ricky Langley. If anything, it's the opposite. They took their motion back. They did the right thing. But you see, can you see what they were doing? Can you see? They were trying to use me as a tool for their own devices. I will not be used. I don't care. They can paint me as a bad mother or anything, but my position is simple. Ricky Langley is a bad man, and he is a lost man. He murdered my son, and I do not want him killed. So Brock and I, we packed our things. We sat in the car and we set off. 950 miles from South Carolina to Lake Charles. It wasn't easy at all. Brock had to miss his SATs again. It wasn't easy for him. He is a child with special needs. The DA was nervous. He knew I was opposing the death penalty. I was nervous as well. 10 years later, it was all going to happen again. Ricky Langley and me in that courtroom, and Jeremy, and in some ways, Oscar Lee too, telling our stories to strangers all over again. I concentrated hard. When the time came for me to give evidence, I stood up. And I remember, I felt like I was in a bubble, and I could hear myself speaking outside. And then they asked me, "Do you think Ricky Langley is mentally sick?" And I said, "I think Ricky Langley has cried out for help many, many, many times. And for whatever reason, his family, his society, and the system have failed him. I think he is sick. He has cried out for help, and even as I can hear my child's death cry, I can also hear Ricky Langley's cry for help." And the room was very silent around me. Ricky just stared at the floor. "On the charge of first-degree murder, how do you find the defendant Langley?" "Not guilty, Your Honor." Diminished responsibility. Ricky was going to spend the rest of his life behind bars. They couldn't give him death penalty now. They can't kill him. They can't kill him now. My name is Lorilei. Do you know what that means?
Thanks so much, Radhika, for as usual a riveting performance.